صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for attending tonight's program. Inshallah, this will be the 6th night out of 10 nights in these lecture series for Muharram 2023. And we would like to start by saying a few announcements as always. Number one, please feel free to give feedback for the lectures. You can do so via the QR code that you can scan. There are some flyers around the masjid that you may see, as well as talking to myself, Brother Yasser, and Sister Maryam to provide feedback so we can make sure these events are better and better every year. And finally, a few more points is that, of course, we want people to donate non-perishable food items as best you can. Last time we had a good amount of food in the baskets. They were filled up. We had filled up 6 boxes. This time, though, not much progress is being made. So I want to urge you guys and your parents to push and try to get more food donations. Final point is that want to make sure that everybody has moved up to the front, so that's good. Please try to make sure not to make noise so as to not distract other people who are listening. And with that, please welcome Sheikh Hamam with a loud salawat.
أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على المصطفى محمد وآله الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك يا رحمة الله الواسعة، ويا باب نجاة الأمة. غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء، يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. علام المجلسي, may Allah bless his soul, narrates in Bihar al-Anwar as he cites the book Muthir al-Ahzan that the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, one day ascended the pulpit with Hassan and Hussein alayhim as-salam. Then the Prophet delivered a sermon and admonished the people. When he finished, he placed his right hand on the head of Hassan and his left hand on the head of Hussein. Then he said, certainly Jibreel has informed me that this son of mine will be killed through poison, pointing to Hassan alayhi salam. And the other will be a martyr and will be drenched in blood, meaning Hussein alayhi salam. Then he said, oh Allah, bless his killing. Oh Allah, make his killing a blessed killing, and make him from the masters of the martyrs. Oh Allah, do not bless the one who kills him and abandons him. Let them feel the heat of your fire, and place them on the day of resurrection in the lowest levels of hellfire. When the Prophet said this, the people began wailing and crying. And so the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa said, O people, do you cry for him, yet you will not support him? Then he said, Oh Allah, you be the one who supports him, be his guardian and supporter. I say, Ya Rasulullah, indeed, everything you foretold took place. Al-Hussein was abandoned by the nation, and they killed him. Only a small minority supported him. Only a handful of supporters supported him on the day of Ashura. But Ya Rasulullah, they exerted all of their efforts in his support until they were slain. And Al-Hussein saw them all slain in front of him. Hence Sayyid al-Hindi rahimahullah says, لست أنساه وحيدا يستجير. I do not forget him when he was all alone and he was calling for help and protection. ويناديهم ألا هل من مجير. And he was calling them, saying, is there anyone who will come and protect us? ويرى أصحابه فوق الهجير الصرعان مثل النجوم الزاهرات. He was witnessing his companions who were lying slain on the burning sand of Karbala, but even then they resembled the shining stars. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. In honor of Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. In yesterday's majlis, we shed light on the gathering, or say the conference, that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam had in Mina 2 years before Muawiyah's death. And the reason we shed light on that gathering is, we said that there's a lot of resemblance between the era of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and our era today. If we look at the circumstances that we're going through, and the circumstances that the Muslims, especially the Muwalin, the Shias of Ahlul Bayt, were going through at that time, we see that there is a lot of resemblance. And so we said that if we look carefully at the tactic or the tactics that Imam Hussein used alayhi salam in order to keep the truth alive and to repel falsehood, and we follow his footsteps salawatullah alayhi in our era to protect our Muslim Shi'i identity. If we do that collectively to protect our identity and at the same time to repel the falsehood and the corruption that exists in our era, then we will be successful at least in protecting our Muslim Shia identity. However, we also mentioned yesterday that one may ask, what can I do as an individual to protect my faith and my piety? See, sometimes you ask, what can we do as a community, as a Shia community, to protect our faith? And sometimes the question is different. What can I do as an individual to protect my faith? What can I do to protect the faith of my family, my children, for example, and my spouse? Here, much can be said, to be honest. One can compose a series of lectures just on this topic. But tonight we want to shed light on a few beneficial points on this regard. Before we start with the points, it is extremely important to understand that the same narrations that told us prior to the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman, may Allah hasten his reappearance, times will be difficult, the believers will be tested with a significant test, there will be a lot of corruption. The same narrations, meaning the narrations of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, informed us of a tragic event that happens before the reappearance of the Imam. What's that tragic event? The narration said that most of those who believe in Sahib al-Zaman before his reappearance become apostates, as in they abandon their faith. This is prior to the dhuhur, prior to the reappearance. And believe it or not, we have several narrations that make the same point. Let me share one narration with you tonight. If we come to the book Kamaluddin and Itmam al-Ni'mah, or Tamam al-Ni'mah for Sheikh al-Saduq rahimahullah, there is a narration by Imam Abu Ja'far al-Jawad, peace be upon him, who happens to be our 9th Imam. Imam al-Jawad tells the narrator who is the Imam after him, meaning Ali al-Hadi. And who is the Imam after Ali al-Hadi? Al-Hasan al-Askari. And so the narrator asks, he tells him, O grandson of Allah's Messenger, who will be the Imam after Al-Hasan, meaning after the 11th Imam? So he tells him, إِنَّ مِن بَعْدِ الْحَسَنِ الْقَائِمُ بِالْحَقِّ الْمُنْتَظَرَ عَجَّلَ اللَّهُ فَرَجَهُ. After Al-Hasan, the Imam will be the one who will rise. The one who will certainly rise, or the one who will rise and establish truth, uphold truth, and he will be the awaited one, meaning Sahib al-Zaman alayhi salam. And so, here, the narrator says, so I said to him, O grandson of Allah's Messenger, why was he called the one who will rise? Al-Qa'im alayhi salam. He says, because he will rise after his remembrance dies. After his remembrance dies means what? It means prior to the reappearance, most people will forget about the Imam. Most people will not be mentioning the Imam. Hence, Imam al-Jawad tells you his remembrance will die prior to his reappearance. Only a small minority will continue mentioning and remembering the Imam alayhi salam. Then he says, وَارْتِدَادُ أَكْثَرِ الْقَائِلِينَ بِإِمَامَتِهِ. And most of those who believe in his imamah will become apostates. La ilaha illallah. What does that mean? What does it mean when he says most of those who believe in his imamah will become apostates? Here there are two possibilities. The first one is, they will actually abandon their belief in Sahib al-Zaman. They will no longer believe in the presence of Imam al-Mahdi, may Allah hasten his reappearance. And one reason behind this could be that the occultation will take a long time. It will be a long occultation, and at the same time there will be much difficulties, much hardships that are experienced prior to his reappearance. So many people will or might give up. This is the first possibility. The second one is, the people that Imam al-Jawad is talking about, they'll continue to believe in the Imam alayhi salam, as in believing in his imamah will be part of their faith. They'll continue to believe in him, but on a practical level they will resemble disbelievers. So from a belief perspective, they will be believers in the truth, but when it comes to practices, their actions will be the actions of who? Of disbelievers. And so it will be as if they have become apostates. Then the narration says, I told him, why was he named the awaited one? Why was he called the awaited one, al-Muntadar? And so the Imam told him, because his occultation will be a long occultation. It will take a long time. See, Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam did not fool us. They didn't tell us that the occultation of Sahib al-Zaman will be short. They said otherwise, and this is really important. You know why? Because when I put in my mind that the occultation of Sahib al-Zaman will take long, if I see that there's a lot of corruption on the earth and the Imam is not rising, I will continue to be patient, because I know Ahlul Bayt told me it will take a while. So you have to remain patient. Then he tells him, فَيَنْتَظِرْ خُرُوجُهُ الْمُخْلِصُونَ or al-mukhlasun. He tells him that those who are sincere, or those who are sincere and selected by Allah, will await his reappearance. They'll continue waiting for the Imam. May we be from them, inshallah. بحق الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. لا بأس بالثانية. Third, loud salawat. He says, وَيُنْكِرُهُ الْمُرْتَابُونَ. As for the people of doubt, they will neglect the presence of the Imam alayhi salam. And as for those who deny his existence, who neglect his existence, they will mock the remembrance of the Imam. And this is something you see today. Sometimes when you mention Imam al-Mahdi in front of certain individuals who are not Shia, they mock you. You really believe in an Imam who's present? Yes, we do. And we know he's present. Alayhi salatu wassalam. We have evidence. We have concrete proof that he is with us. For Allah would never leave the earth devoid of a representative of God called Hujjatullah, the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he says, alayhi salam, during the occultation, those who specify a time for the reappearance will be liars, will be lying. So if you hear someone saying, Sahib al-Zaman will rise tomorrow, will rise in 2024, will rise in this day, this month, the Imam says he's a liar. You cannot specify a time for the reappearance. Then he says, those who are hasty during the occultation will be doomed. And those who submit, meaning they submit to Allah and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam in regards to the time of the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi, or they submit in general regarding all affairs, those people will be saved. So we understand from the word of Al-Jawad alayhi salam that if we want to be saved, we need to submit to Allah's decision. We want the Imam to reappear, but what if Allah Azza wa Jal keeps on delaying the reappearance for another 10 or 20 years, what should we do? We should submit. That's what you want, Ya Allah? Then we will remain faithful and we will await our Imam alayhi salam, just as Ansar al-Hussein awaited the green light from Imam al-Hussein to start the battle. You know, Ansar al-Hussein, tonight is their night. Tonight, on the 6th eve of Muharram, the companions of Imam al-Hussein are mentioned, alayhi salamu alayhim. They wanted to begin the battle before the day of Ashura. They were eager to fight their enemy, but the Imam told them to wait. Salamullah alayhi. It's the enemy who started with the battle, and then the Imam gave them the green light to defend themselves. The question is, in the meanwhile, what can we do to protect our faith? First and foremost, adhering to الثقلين is beyond necessary. What are الثقلين? The Quran and Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. Adhering to those two, when it comes to what? When it comes to beliefs, when it comes to practices, when it comes to ideas, thoughts, when it comes to morals, when it comes to anything, adhering to those two is very, very important. My brothers and sisters, we have a lot of Muslimin today, but many of them have ideas or beliefs or thoughts that contradict what the Quran says, or what Ahlul Bayt say, alayhim salatu wassalam. When I realize that what I believe in, or the thought I have in my mind contradicts what Al-Quran says, or what Ahlul Bayt say, what should I do? I should throw my idea away and accept the idea of the Quran, right or wrong? The idea of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. I shouldn't do otherwise. Some Muslimin, they have certain practices that contradict Islam. And I'll give you a very simple example before we continue. Is Islam with racism or against racism? What would you say? It's against racism, right? We have clear narrations from the Prophet ﷺ where he bans racism. But you find certain Muslimin today, without pointing fingers of course, who are racist. That contradicts their own religion. So when I find that I believe in something, or I have an idea or a practice or a moral that contradicts what Ahlul Bayt or the Quran says, what Ahlul Bayt or the Quran say, then I should work on myself. I should change that idea, remove it, and replace it with the idea or the practice or the moral that the Thaqalain teach. This is beyond important if we want to remain faithful. If we don't want to remain faithful, that's another story. What else can we do? The second thing we need to keep in mind is asking Allah to hasten the reappearance of the Imam. It's a simple deed, but the effect of this deed is marvelous. So what should you say? For example, Allahumma ajil farajah. In many cases, you know, we say Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah. This word, this short and simple word, ajil farajahum, has a major effect on you. Really? Has a major effect on me? Yes. How so? It keeps on protecting your faith. It's part of the fuel you need to keep the fire of faith ignited. How do we know this? We know it from a tradition by Imam al-Askari alayhi salatu wassalam. The tradition is long, so I'll shed light on the part that we need in this lecture. One day, one of Imam al-Askari's closest companions, called Ahmad ibn Ishaq rahmatullah alayh, he came to the Imam and he asked him about the next Imam. Who's the next Imam? So he informed him of Imam al-Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala faraja, and he brought Imam al-Mahdi to Ahmad ibn Ishaq. He showed him his son. Ahmad ibn Ishaq was one of the people who saw Imam al-Mahdi with his eyes. So in that narration, in that dialogue, Imam al-Askari tells Ahmad bin Ishaq, as you can find in the book Kamal al-Din wa Tamam al-Ni'ma, he tells him, والله ليغيبن غيبة لا ينجو فيها من الهلكة إلا من ثبته الله على القول بإمامته ووفقه فيها للدعاء بتعجيل فرجه. He says that Sahib al-Zaman will go through a period of occultation, and the period will be very long. And he says the only people who will be saved during that occultation are the ones who are given aid by Allah Ta'ala to remain faithful, and the ones who ask Allah to do what? To hasten the reappearance. Interestingly, Imam al-Askari says you need tawfiq, you need godly aid to ask Allah to hasten the reappearance. So if you're saying وَعَجِّلْ فَرَجَهُمْ, if you're saying Ya Allah hasten their appearance, no, you are muwaffaq. Allah is aiding you. Allah is bringing down special mercy on you for you to say that word. Now realize, the Imam also said that the people will be in need, those who are saved will be in need of what? Of Allah's assistance. Allah will assist them so they may be saved, so they may remain faithful. Which brings us to a question that we asked during Shahr Ramadan, if you remember. Why would Allah Ta'ala give assistance to certain people and not others? Allah is generous. He's all generous. And He doesn't mind guiding everyone. So why would He give assistance to my neighbor Ja'far and not my neighbor Musa? Why? To my neighbor Ja'far and not my neighbor Steve, for example. Why? Because if you want assistance from Allah Ta'ala, you have to be worthy of receiving that assistance. And to be worthy, Allah has to see that there's goodness in you. Allah has to see that you have, for example, good intentions, that you're doing something good, which is from Allah. You want more tawfiq, right? We all want more tawfiq. Then exert as much effort as you can in doing the deeds that please Allah. Any deed that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it is as small as removing a stone off the sidewalk so that no one, trips on that stone. The deeds, the good deeds, the deeds Allah Ta'ala loves, when you do them, they give you what? They grant you more godly aid. Alright. So we understand that we need to ask Allah to hasten their appearance. What else can we do? As I told you, much can be said. Let me mention one last thing we can do before we go to the companions of Imam al-Hussein. In my humble opinion, one of the best methods we can use to preserve our faith as individuals, or the faith of our families at least, especially in the West, when we're living in secular environments, when we're living amongst secular systems, is creating our own Islamic atmosphere, or what I like to call our own Islamic bubble. Create your own Islamic bubble, your own Islamic atmosphere. When you're living in the East or the West, especially if you're living in the West, you need to create your own atmosphere. It is vital. It will help you to remain faithful and pious. So what should I do? For example, avoid going to places where people are openly disobeying Allah Ta'ala, like nightclubs, bars, disco clubs, dances, proms, concerts, and avoid going to places where you believe if you go there, you will not be able to leave that place without sinning. If you know that if you go to a specific place most likely you'll fall into a sin. Do not go there. Avoid it. Go to somewhere else. Somewhere where your spirit will remain safe. Secondly, make sure that you have a relationship with a scholar or with multiple scholars. Which scholars? The trusted scholars. The scholars who work day and night to convey the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. Because the presence of such individuals is vital. These individuals help the rest of the believers remain steadfast. And you feel it when you sit down with a scholar. You feel cleansed. You feel that your soul is at peace when you're with him and you're listening to his words of wisdom. Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam makes a very important statement on this regard. I'm not sure if you remember it, but I'm sure many of you have read it. In Dua Abi Hamza al-Thumali, when he says, if I don't have a scholar in my area, what should I do? Well, the least you can do is open YouTube and listen to a lecture that is delivered by one of these scholars. But listening to their words, hearing their words, listening to their lessons or their lectures or majalis, you name it, is essential. What else can we do to create the atmosphere? Make sure you visit the dead once per week or once per month. At least once per month. Go to the graveyard. We have a graveyard right behind Markaz al-Hussein, right? That's an advantage that you guys have. Not all Marakis, not all centers have graveyards. Make sure you visit your brothers and sisters in faith once a week, if not once a week, once a month. Why? Because number one, when we visit the graveyard, we feel a sense of peace. Try it. You feel that you leave your problems, your worldly problems, your worldly headaches outside the graveyard. You go in, you read Surah Al-Fatiha, you visit the dead, and then you start thinking. You start thinking of what? Of your future. Not your career, not your university, your future in the hereafter. You start thinking, right now I'm visiting the dead. One day I will be visited. One day it's going to be me in that grave who's waiting for someone to come and visit me. So let me prepare for death. When you prepare for death, then you become closer to obeying Allah and more distant from disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hence the narration says what? Whosoever remembers death abundantly, Allah ta'ala will love him. Why would Allah love someone who remembers death? Well, it's quite simple. Because if you remember death abundantly, then you will abandon God's disobedience. And you will be pushed towards obeying Him. So Allah Ta'ala will love you. It's very simple. What else can we do to create that environment? Make sure that you have your own relationship with Sahib al-Zaman, Al-Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. By visiting the Imam, complaining to the Imam when you feel worried or when you feel sorrow. Imagine that he's right in front of you. And speak to him as if he's in front of you because he hears you. Salamullahi alayh. One day, there was this companion of the Imam, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. He wanted to see, can the Imam see behind walls or not? And so he came to the Imam's house, and one of the Imam's she-slaves, she opened the door. So in order to test the Imam, he placed his hand on the she-slave, which was wrong. And so he heard a call from the Imam alayhi salam telling him, come in, but the tone the Imam used, or in better terms, the expression he used, indicated that he was angry. So the man knew he was at fault. He told the Imam, I'm sorry. I did not have any bad intentions, but I just wanted to see if you can actually see what's behind the wall. If you can actually know what we're doing, although you're not seeing us. Of course, they noticed through Allah's command. Allah Ta'ala gives them the power, alayhimus salam, to know what we do, although they might not be in front of us. So the Imam told him, you're right. I know your intention is clean. I'm paraphrasing the tradition, of course. You're right. But if we could not see what's behind the wall, then there wouldn't be a difference between you and us. As in, if we were like you, and walls would prevent us from seeing what's behind the wall, then what would be the difference between you and us, Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salatu wassalam? So, talk to your Imam, as if he's in front of you, he hears you. Salute him, Assalamu alayka ya baqiyatullah. Pay sadaqah on his behalf, so that Allah Ta'ala protects him. Pray for the Imam, as in do a supplication, asking Allah to protect him, alayhi salam. That builds a relationship, or a stronger relationship between you and the Imam. And when that is built, trust me, Sahib al-Zaman salamullah alayh will not let go of you. He will help you to remain faithful. The last point I want to mention, before we go to the companions of the Imam salamullah alayh, is attending the majalis of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Majalis al-dhikr, the gatherings in which Allah and Ahlul Bayt are mentioned. These majalis are a blessing, especially majalis Ashura, majalis al-Husayn. Attending these majalis and upholding various forms of Husayni rituals, what we call sha'air, be it wearing black, be it latam, slapping your face or your chest for the Imam alayhi salam, be it crying for the Imam, attending the majlis, cooking food and giving the food in honor of the Imam. These rituals, these Husayni rituals are key. Why? Because they keep you linked to Al-Husayn alayhi salam. Al-Husayn, Rasulullah says about him that he is an ark of salvation, and he is a lantern of guidance. So when you connect yourself to Abi Abdullah salawatullah wa salamu alayh, if you drift away, Al-Husayn salawatullah alayh will help you come back to the straight path. You know, when we look at the companions of Imam al-Husayn salawatullah alayh, we find that some of them were a product of majalis. You know what that means? It means the majalis made them companions of Abi Abdullah. That's how powerful and blessed the majalis of Ahlul Bayt are. There was a lady in Kufa called Mariya bint Munqidh al-Abdi, rahimahullah. The lady would basically allow the Shias to come into her house so they may mention the virtues or the merits or the remembrance of Ahlul Bayt. So basically she had turned her house into a Husayniyah, into an Islamic center. The Shias would come in Kufa and they'd mention Ahlul Bayt in her house. As a result, what happened? 6 individuals came out of those gatherings, joined Imam al-Husayn in Mecca, and became from the martyrs of Karbala. They were a product of majalis. Right now, when you attend the majlis, you might not be feeling what's happening, but the majlis is giving you power. It's giving you a spiritual boost. Sorry. You might not feel the boost right now or the power right now, but trust me, that energy, that positive energy you're getting will show itself sooner or later, especially when Sahib al-Zaman Ajrallah Ta'ala Faraja rises. So creating that Islamic atmosphere is key. Creating the Islamic atmosphere for ourselves and our families is key to preserve our faith and our Islamic identity, to preserve our piety. Long story short, one of the main lessons, my brothers and sisters, that we derived from the companions of Imam al-Hussein salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh is remaining steadfast even when the majority gives up or abandons you. I'm not sure if you remember, we said yesterday when mentioning Muslim alayhi salam that this is a big lesson we learned from Muslim. Muslim bin Aqil was abandoned. He was left alone in Kufa. Muslim could have given up if he wanted. He could have said, "Khalas, I surrender." But he didn't. Because Muslim knows he's on the right path. And he will not sell his afterlife. He will not sell his life in heaven for anything. He was more than loyal towards Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. The same lesson is derived from the companions. The companions of the Imam were resilient. Hussein meant everything for them. And they loved him more than they loved their own selves. Hence, they found pleasure in being sacrificed for him salawatullah alayhi on the day of Ashura. We have a tradition which says that they did not even feel pain on that day. Why? Why? Out of their love for the Imam, out of their devotion, out of their love for the Imam salawatullah alayhi, they wouldn't feel pain when they're being stabbed, when they're being struck. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compensated with that specific thing because of their devotion. Long story short, their devotion for the Imam played role. The Ansar were truly phenomenal supporters. And one becomes confused, to be honest, when he wants to mention the Ansar of the Imam. Which Ansari should I mention and which should I not? Let me mention two for tonight. Number one, Habis ibn Abi Shabib al-Shakiri. Habis, may Allah bless his soul, was a young man. He was young. And bear in mind, a good amount of the supporters of Imam al-Hussein were youth. They were young men. Tomorrow, we'll commemorate the tragedy of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. The day after al-Qasim. The day after Ali al-Akbar. All of them were young. They were all young. Alayhim as-salatu was-salam. Abbas was 34. Ali al-Akbar was 27, according to one opinion. And al-Qasim was 14. They were young. Many of his companions, or a good amount of them, were young. Salamullahi alayhim. Abbas was a young man. But he was a devoted Shia. He had a slave with him on that day called Shawdab. Shawdab had done what Maria did. He had turned his house into a Husayniyah. The Shias were welcome to come to his house to mention the virtues of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, to mention Ahlul Bayt. And so Abis turns to Shawdab. He tells him, Shawdab, what are you intending on doing? He tells him, I want to fight with you until I am killed. That's my intention. He tells him, very well. Go forth and fight until you're killed, so that Hussein alayhi salam can be pleased with the compensation Allah will give him for sacrificing you, just as he is pleased or was pleased with the compensation Allah gave him for sacrificing other companions of his. Go forth, Ya Shawdab. Then he tells him, today is a day in which we seek reward from Allah in any means possible. As in, we should exert all of our efforts and do whatever we can to gain as many rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as possible. It was his last day on earth. And here, Habis rahimahullah is teaching me and you that we should do the same in regards to the day of Ashura. On the day of Ashura, one should be energized. He should not feel, de-energized. He should be energized and ready to serve the Imam and to uphold the morning gatherings in the best manner possible. so he may gain the biggest amount of reward. Shawdab went forth and fought until he was killed. Then Habis stood in front of the Imam alayhi salam. He told him, at the moment, there is no one on earth who is more dear to me than you. And if I was able to push away oppression, to push oppression away from you by doing anything, by giving you anything that is dearer to me than my own soul, I would have done so. Peace be upon you. I testify that I follow your guidance and the guidance of your father. Then he charged at the enemy. One of the enemies knew him. When he saw him, he said, this is the lion of the lions. As in, don't approach him. If you want to die, go and fight him. So the tradition says they held back. They didn't have the courage to face Habis, rahimahullah. Habis told them, isn't there a man who is willing to come? Isn't there a man who will face me? Umar bin Sa'ad told them, stone him. Break his bones with your stones. So they stoned him. Habis did a deed that the enemies did not expect. What did he do? He removed his armor. He took off his helmet and threw it away. And he charged at the enemy. It is said the enemy told him, Habis, have you become mad? Habis, have you become crazy? And so he said, yes. The love of Hussein has made me crazy. And he fought, rahmatullah alayh, until they killed him. Resilience. The companions of the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam teach us what? To remain steadfast. Then again, we learn that lesson not only from the men, we also learn it from the women. Let me give you one last example before we go into the azab. There was a man called Ali ibn Mudahir, not Habib, Ali ibn Mudahir. He had his wife with him in Karbala. On the night of Ashura, when Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam tested his companions for one last time, he told them, if any of you have women with you in your tents, send those women to Banu Asad. There were people from Banu Asad who were close to Karbala. Ali rises. He tells the Imam, why, Abu Abdullah? Why do you want us to take our women to Banu Asad? He says, because tomorrow my women will be captured and they'll be taken into captivity. And I fear that the same will happen to your women. Look at his mercy. Salamullahi alayhi. Ali went back to his tent. His wife was in the tent. When she saw him, she stood for him in respect of her husband. She smiled at him. Ali told her, it's not the time to smile. She said, I heard Al-Hussein, he gave a sermon, alayhi salam. You know, she calls Imam al-Hussein the following, Gharibu Fatima, the stranger of Fatima, salawatullah alayha. I heard the stranger of Fatima delivering a sermon. And after that, he said something. I heard unclear words, but I did not know what he said. What did he say? Ali told her, he told us to take our women to Banu Asad, to their cousins. She said, why? He told her, Abu Abdullah told us tomorrow he'll be killed and his women will be taken into captivity. And so he doesn't want our women to also be taken into captivity. The lady tells him, and what are you going to do? He says, I'm going to send you to your cousins. You know what she tells him? She rises and she strikes her head on the pole of the tent. And she tells him, "O Ibn Mudahir, you were not fair. You did not treat me fairly. O son of Mudahir, does it make you happy that I will be safe and I will not be captured by the enemy, yet the daughters of Rasulullah will be captured and will be taken into captivity? Does it make you happy that my abaya, my cloak, will remain on my head, and the abaya, the cloak of Zainab salamullah alayha, will be snatched off her head?" Does it make you happy? This was one of the crimes of the enemies. They took the cloaks of the daughters of Rasulullah, one of the major crimes. Yes, they had hijab under it. But who are you? How dare you put your hand on the blessed and clean cloak of Zainab bint Ali or the daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? This was a major crime that hurt Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So she tells him, "Does it make you happy that my abaya will remain on my head, that the abaya of Zainab alayha salam will be removed? Does it make you happy that you will uphold your duty in the eyes of Rasulullah, yet I will not uphold my duty in the eyes of Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam?" No, I swear by Allah, you men will be killed with the men of Banu Hashim, and we women will face what the women of Banu Hashim will face. So the man goes back to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam crying. The Imam tells him, "What makes you cry?" He tells him, "An Asadiyya, this wife of mine, she does not want to go, Abu Abdullah. She wants to face what you will face." And so the Imam cries. And he tells them, "Jazakum minna khayra, juzitum minna khayra. May you be given a good reward for the treatment you have shown us." Yes, the Ansar, may Allah bless their souls, were resilient. They were phenomenal supporters of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And if I forget some of them, I will never forget the chief of the Ansar, Habib bin Mudahir, may Allah bless his soul. Habib had a unique status in the eyes of Imam al-Hussein. Hence the Imam sends him a letter telling him to come to Karbala to support him. And Habib rahimahullah answers the call. He comes to Karbala. Meanwhile, what happens? Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, it is said he had 12 banners that he distributed amongst his companions. The major banner was in the arm of Abu al-Fadl, in the hand of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. However, he distributed the rest of the banners. One banner remained. And so one of the companions tells the Imam alayhi salam, "Allow me to carry it, honor me by allowing me to carry it." The Imam tells him, "No, the one who will carry it will come." As the Imam is with his companions, ajarakumullah, the dust rises and Habib arrives to Karbala. Habib rahimahullah descends from his horse and he kisses the ground in front of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. Then he salutes the Imam and the companions with salam. They reply with salam. Zainab alayhi salam hears that someone has arrived to Karbala. And so she asks, "Who has arrived?" She is told, "Habib bin Mudahir has arrived." So she tells someone to convey her salam to Habib bin Mudahir. When the salam of Zainab was conveyed to Habib, Habib slapped his face and he placed dust on his head as a sign of grief. Then he said, "Who am I in order to receive the salam of the daughter of the commander of the faithful? أنا منين وتسلم علي بنت المرتضى حامل علي انت يا بقيت حيدر تسلمين. والله انا خادم لكم وعبد الحسين. The poet says, as if Habib says, you salute me with salam, O Zainab. I want you to know that I am a servant for you, Ahl al-Bayt, and a slave for Hussein. Ajarakum Allah. Then Habib sought permission from Imam al-Hussein to salute Zainab with salam. Permission was given. Habib came to the tent of Zainab and he stood in front of the entrance of the tent. Then he said, peace be upon you, O daughters of Allah's messenger. Then he sat in front of the entrance with his head down as he was grieving. He was upset. Why? He was remembering the tragedies that will befall Zainab alayhi salam. Do not forget, Habib was a close companion of Imam Ali, and he knew secrets that other people did not know. And so Habib addressed Zainab saying, inni wajdik ya Zainab. My heart aches and my heart breaks for you, O Zainab, as I remember the day in which you shall be placed on a thin camel, as the head of your brother Hussein will be on a long spear, and around the head will be the heads of his family members and companions. Then he says, as if I see my head, meaning the head of Habib, as if I see my head tied to the neck of a horse, as the horse moves and strikes it with its knee. It is said Zainab Salamullah alayha responded to Habib, telling him, oh Habib, my brother Hussein has informed me about these tragedies. He has informed me about this, and I wish I was blind, so I do not see these tragedies. وزينب وسيدته وحضراء. أجرك الله يا بقية الله, أجركم الله. The day of Ashura, Arabians stood in defense of their Imam. On that day, Habib bin Mudahir charged at the enemy as he was saying, Ana Habib wa Abi Mudharu Farisuha أيجاء وحرب تسعر. I am Habib and my father is Madhar. I am a valiant warrior who fights when the fire of the battle is ignited. Ajarakumullah. He fought like a valiant warrior. However, Habib was attacked by multiple people. Ajarakumullah. They struck him on his head. Habib fell to the ground, and so one of the ruthless enemies came to him and beheaded Habib. Aywa Habiba wa Sayyida. The tradition says when Hussein lost Habib, بان الانكسار عليه. It was clear that Hussein was devastated for the loss of Habib. And so the Imam said, I am pleased with the reward Allah will give me for sacrificing my companions and myself. Then he recited the verse, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Surely we belong to Allah, and to Him we shall return abundantly. Yes, this was the stance of Habib. The rest of the supporters also charged forward to sacrifice themselves for their Imam. Amongst them was a young boy who was 11 years old, Amr ibn Junada. His father had been killed with Imam al-Hussein. His father was one of the martyrs on that day. But his mother came to him and she placed the armor on her son and she told him, my son, go forth and fight until you are killed. Fight in defense of the grandson of Rasulullah. And so he told her, I shall do so. He went to the Imam and sought permission to fight. The Imam told his companions, this man, this boy's father was killed in the battle, and I fear possibly his mother does not want him to fight. He told him, Master, my mother is the one who told me to fight. And so the Imam gave him permission. Amr descended to the battlefield, but the question was, what will Amr say? Will he say, I am the son of Junada? Will he mention his lineage like other companions of Imam al-Hussein did? No, he mentioned his belief. He said, Amir Hussein Hussein is my commander, and what a wonderful commander he is. Surur Fuad al-Bashir al-Nadir. He is the one who instills joy in the heart of the Prophet. فهل تعلمون له من نظير? Ali and Fatima are his parents. Do you know anyone who is equal to Hussein? Salawatullahi alayhi. Ajarakumullah. He fought until he was beheaded and the enemies threw his head to the camp. Now his mother came, rahmatullah alayh. What do you think will happen to his mother? Will she collapse when she sees the head of her son? No, she picks up the head and she tells him, Ahsanta ya bunay. يا قرة عيني وسرور قلبي. Well done, my son, oh he who makes me rejoice. Then she threw his head at the enemy and took a pole from the tent and went to fight for the Imam. But Aba Abdullah told her, come back, come back. He made her return and he supplicated for her. This was a second companion, a second supporter who supported the Imam on that day. A third companion was the Turkish slave called Wadah. Wadah fought bravely until he was on the brink of martyrdom. When he was about to pass away, he called Aba Abdullah, seeking help from the Imam, and so Aba Abdullah came. When he saw him in that state, do you know what the Imam did? He embraced the Turkish slave. Wadah opened his eyes only to see the cheek of the Imam beside his cheek, and so he smiled and said, who is like me when the grandson of Rasulullah has his cheek on mine? وأنصار الحسين ومصيبة وحزنا. أجركم Allah. The companions kept on charging to defend their Imam until no one was left from the companions of Hussein. The tragedy I shall mention right now equates all of the tragedies of the companions put together. This is the last tragedy we'll mention tonight. وَنَسْأَلُكُمُ الدُّعَاء. Abu Abdullah alayhi salam lost all of his companions. and even his family members. Even Abu al-Fadl was slain. Abu Abdullah stood on the plains of Karbala. 30,000 enemies are in front of him. He looks right and left only to see the bodies of his family members and companions. The dust is on their foreheads. They're all lying like sacrificial lambs. What does Hussein do at that point? He does a heartbreaking deed. He begins calling his companions, saying, Ya أبطال الصفا ويا فرسانا عجاء ماني أناديكم فلا تجيبون. O valiant warriors of the battle, why is it that I call upon you, yet you do not answer my call? I call you, yet you do not hear me, you do not respond to me. Are you sleeping? I urge you to wake up from your sleep. Rise, these are the daughters of Rasulullah who have been devastated. They are devastated over your loss. So rise from your sleep and defend the daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. Then the Imam began calling them with their names, by their names, in a sad voice. Ya Habib ibn Mudafir, Ya Zughayr ibn al-Qaim, Ya Fulan, Ya Fulan. His call shatters the heart, but what shatters the heart even more is when he calls Banu Hashim, my son Ali al-Akbar, my nephew Qasim, brother Abbas. Wa musibatuh وحسيناه وقتيله. Aba Abdullah, we were not there on that day to answer your call. If only we were there. But today we answer your call, Aba Abdullah. Lift your arms to answer the call of Hussein with me. Labbaik ya Hussein. لبيك يا حسين، لبيك يا حسين. أجركم الله. Sayyid Abdul Hussein Sharafuddin says at that point when he called his companions, the bodies of the companions began moving. Allahu Akbar. This was one of the miracles of Karbala. The bodies began moving. It was as if the companions were saying, Master, forgive us. If it was in our hands, we would come back to this world and we would sacrifice ourselves 1,000 times for you, Ya Aba Abdullah. Wa musibatah wa Hussein. My heart breaks for Zainab and the daughters of Rasulullah. What happens to them when they hear the call of Hussein? When Hussein speaks to the enemy, they cry. When Hussein calls for help, although the supporters are present, they cry. So what happened to Zainab when she heard Hussein calling out, Ya Habib, Ya Zughayr, Ya Har, Ya Abbas, Ya Abbas. As if Zainab tells him, Khoya, 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 Allah ya'inak, malak ma'in. Khoya, Allah ya'inak, malak ma'in. brother, you do not have a supporter. Oh, come and your supporters are slain, they're all sleeping on the dust. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. توجهوا إلى الله تعالى. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك بأحب الخلق إليك محمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين وتسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. فرج عنا يا الله. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Sahib al-Zaman, to make us from his sincere followers and supporters, to forgive our sins, to conceal our defects, and to fulfill our needs. If anyone has a need, ask it and Allah ta'ala will answer it. اللهم بحق الغريب أبي عبد الله الحسين عليه السلام اقضي حاجة كل محتاج، لا سيما حوائج الحاضرين والمشاهدين ومن سألني الدعاء يا رب العالمين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to heal all sick believers for the sake of the sick Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, and we ask him to bless all believers who passed away, especially our dear family members and friends, those who are completely forgotten and never mentioned, the great martyrs and the noble scholars. إلى أرواحهم جميعا وإلى أرواح أمواتكم وأمواتي، لا سيما إلى أرواح والدي وأخي وحبيبي حسين. نبعث ثواب مجلسنا هذا وثواب الفاتحة تسبقها صلاة على محمد وآل محمد.